Muhammad Ali, the man who floated like a butterfly, stung like a bee, and lived like a king of conscience. Muhammad Ali was born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. on January 17, 1942, in Louisville, Kentucky. As a child, Cassius Clay grew up in a modest neighborhood, experiencing the everyday realities of racial discrimination in 1940s America. His first brush with destiny came in the form of loss, when his bicycle was stolen. Furious, he reported it to a local policeman named Joe Martin, who also happened to coach boxing at a local gym. Cassius declared he wanted to whoop whoever took his bike, and Martin simply replied, "Well, you better learn how to fight first." From that moment forward, young Cassius trained with a passion and intensity few had ever seen. He was quick, confident, and charismatic, a born showman. His style was unorthodox, hands down, feet dancing, and mouth always running. He was poetry in motion, and he knew it. By the time he was 18, he was on a plane to Rome to represent the United States in the 1960 Olympic Games. There, he dazzled the world with his speed and grace, bringing home the gold medal in the light heavyweight division. But the victory was bittersweet. Upon returning to his hometown, the same streets he proudly represented refused to let him eat in a whites-only restaurant. Legend has it that in frustration, he tossed his Olympic gold medal into the Ohio River, a symbolic rejection of a nation that celebrated his fists but ignored his humanity. In 1964, at just 22 years old, Cassius Clay faced the reigning heavyweight champion, Sonny Liston. Liston was terrifying, a brawler with knockout power. Almost no one gave Clay a chance, but with blinding speed and psychological warfare, Clay outboxed and outwitted Liston, forcing him to quit before the seventh round. The underdog had become the king. After the fight, the world was still trying to make sense of this young man who could dance, punch, and predict rounds. But then came another shock. He announced he had joined the Nation of Islam and had taken the name Muhammad Ali. The name represented his new identity, his new faith, and his refusal to be defined by anyone else. Many in the press refused to acknowledge his new name, calling him Clay for years. But Ali stood firm. He would define himself on his own terms. Just a few years later, in 1967, Ali made the most controversial and courageous decision of his life. When drafted to fight in the Vietnam War, he refused. He said, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong. No Viet Cong ever called me the N-word." In that single moment, he gave up everything: his heavyweight title, his boxing license, and his freedom. He was convicted of draft evasion and sentenced to 5 years in prison, though the conviction was later overturned by the Supreme Court. During his exile from boxing, Ali became a global figure of resistance and morality. He spoke at universities, marched with civil rights leaders, and became a symbol of dignity, protest, and personal belief. While the ring stayed quiet, his voice grew louder. The world began to see that Muhammad Ali wasn't just a boxer. He was a revolutionary. In 1970, Ali was finally allowed to return to the ring, but the years away had taken a toll. The sport had moved on. New champions had risen, and Ali had something to prove. In 1971, he faced off against the undefeated Joe Frazier in what was called the fight of the century. It was a brutal, punishing bout that went the distance. Frazier won by unanimous decision, handing Ali his first professional loss. But the rivalry was far from over. 3 years later, Ali would face his most dangerous opponent, the devastating puncher George Foreman. The fight was set in Kinshasa, Zaire, in 1974. The world called it The rumble in the jungle. Foreman was younger, stronger, and undefeated. Nobody thought Ali could win. But Ali had a plan. He introduced the now legendary rope-a-dope strategy, leaning on the ropes, letting Foreman tire himself out by throwing punches that mostly missed or were absorbed. Then, in the 8th round, Ali exploded with a flurry and knocked Foreman out. The world exploded. Muhammad Ali, against all odds, had regained the heavyweight title. At 32, he had done what no one thought possible. He wasn't just back, he was immortal. But his greatest battle was still ahead. In 1975, Ali faced Joe Frazier once more in their 3rd and final bout. The Thrilla in Manila. The fight was savage, a grueling war between two men who refused to give up. After 14 brutal rounds in the sweltering Philippine heat, Frazier's corner stopped the fight. Ali collapsed in his corner, completely spent, saying it was the closest thing to dying he had ever felt. The wars in the ring continued for a few more years. He fought Ken Norton, Ernie Shavers. He won, he lost, he came back. By the time he retired in 1981, his record stood at 56 wins, 5 losses, with 37 knockouts. In 1984, Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a condition that slowly took away his speech and motor skills. But even as his voice quieted, his presence remained powerful. He became a global ambassador for peace, traveling the world, raising money for humanitarian causes, and promoting understanding between cultures and religions. In one of the most emotional moments of his later life, over the years, Muhammad Ali became more than a sports hero. He became a symbol of resistance, redemption, and resilience. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, was named Sportsman of the Century by Sports Illustrated, and was honored by people across all walks of life. On June 3, 2016, the world said goodbye to Muhammad Ali. He passed away at the age of 74. His funeral was attended by people from every continent, every religion, every background, united in grief and gratitude for a man who gave everything he had. He was the loudest voice in the room when others were silent. He was willing to lose everything for what he believed in. He floated like a butterfly, he stung like a bee, and he changed the world with both his fists and his faith. Muhammad Ali's legacy lives on, not just in boxing gyms, but in classrooms, in books, in songs, in every corner of the earth where people fight for justice and truth. He showed us that greatness is not just about winning. It's about standing tall when it's hardest to do so. As he once said, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And Ali? He paid his rent in full. He was not just the greatest boxer, he was the greatest human being to ever wear the gloves. And he will always be the greatest of all time.